Hey, Stephen. Nice to see you again after so long. How are you doing?
Hey, it's really nice to be on filming with you. I'm well. How are you?
Pretty good, thanks. I'm really excited to talk with you today because recently, I don't know if you noticed, but I did a bunch of videos about the Three Kingdoms, the topic that we both love. And one of the most popular comments I have on my videos, especially on my Bilibili channel, is surprise. So a lot of my viewers, many viewers, are surprised to see that Westerners care about the Three Kingdoms of China, obviously, which is their surprise is fairly surprising to me because I mean, you and me both, we've been marinating into this Three Kingdoms culture for many years. We've taken part in Three Kingdoms community. So I wanted to talk to you about the Three Kingdoms so that we can show how much love there is for this topic in Western countries, so Europe, US, and Australia, and so on. Because I believe you are probably one of the very few people that I know that is even more of a Three Kingdoms geek than me. And I, I say it as a compliment, obviously. But just for the sake of the conversation, can you please tell us who you are and what is your story with the Three Kingdoms?
My name's Steve, as you've already heard, but some people know me better as Sun Fin. I first discovered about the Three Kingdoms when I was 12 and I was at a friend's house. We were walking home from school together and he said, "Do you want to try playing this game I've just bought on my PlayStation 2?" And it was Dynasty Tactics 2. And I loved it. And so every day after school for like the next 2 weeks, we'd go back to his and we would play through the campaign mode. I was playing as Shu at that point, and I was then going on holiday, and he lent me a different game, Dynasty Warriors 2. And I poured hundreds of hours into his copy of Dynasty Warriors 2. And then once I'd largely finished that, went away and bought Dynasty Warriors 4 Empires, which was the first Dynasty Three Kingdoms game I owned. Spent hours on that. Then got Dynasty Tactics, the original, and then started playing through that one. And then Dynasty Warriors 2, and then Romance of the Three Kingdoms 7. But at some point, I started being more interested in the biographies on the game than I was in actually playing the games, and spent hundreds of hours, particularly on Dynasty Tactics 2, because I then want to play more of the game because then you got to unlock another biography, and was able to read more about these people. And then I started spending time on Wikipedia, reading about the Three Kingdoms there, which was hugely dissatisfying because there was never enough information, and I wasn't really sure if it was true or not. And I wanted Romance of the Three Kingdoms, but this was before the day of Amazon being really popular. It existed, but my family didn't use it, so I had no idea how I was going to track it down. And I was in a bookshop in America, and I found it on a bookshelf, visiting my uncle who lived there, and so bought these two books of versions of Romance of the Three
You
Kingdoms. You can tell that
beautiful.
they are absolutely battered from, I would guess, 30 plus reads and rereads over the years. Um, so read Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and then realized there was this thing called Chronicles of the Three Kingdoms, which was the historical
Mm.
source. And so I spent more time trying to find that. And I remember asking about it on like Google questions or something along those lines. And someone directed my attention to something called Scholars of Shen Zhou. And they said, if anyone is going to know about where you can find Chronicles of the Three Kingdoms, it's going to be the guys over at Scholars of Shen Zhou. So I went and found that discussion forum. I think so. That was 2007. So I'd been 16 at that point, and over the next 20 years, I've racked up just over 10,000 posts discussing the Three Kingdoms on that forum alone. I then joined a couple of other spin off forums, one called Nine Dragons, which I also did 10,000 posts on. I ran that one for a while. So I've spent a significant amount of time discussing the Three Kingdoms. And I regularly tell people now, if you were to burgle my house, the thing to look for is the bookshelf that's behind me, which has got my ancient Chinese history books on, because I've spent a fortune tracking down the best English language Three Kingdoms history books that I can find.
And here is the address of Stephen. And I'm kidding, I don't know. But but I remember actually finding about this website, the archives of Shen Zhou and Kongming archives, right?
Yeah, so Kongming's archives is like the overarching website, and then Scholars of Shen Zhou is the discussion forum that's part of it.
Oh, true. And I remember finding this thing when I was in England. Actually, I was doing an internship in Manchester, and I found this place, and I spent my evenings going through those websites, the forum and the archives website, just to learn more about biographies.
The website has translations of the SGZ biographies, don't they?
Yeah, that's the thing. You on this website, what was awesome is you had several biographies for the same characters with the Romance of the Three Kingdoms biographies, the Romance of the Three Kingdoms Chronicles biography, and so on. So you could learn the real history of a character, but also the more legendary side of his life and so on. That was brilliant. So when we first talked and you mentioned you were involved in all of this, I expected that you were like nearly 50 years old. It turns out you are even younger than me. So I was really excited when we first talked about all of this. You guys did such a phenomenal job. I still go back to those websites, especially to check the maps when I plan my books. Right now,
in anticipation of this conversation, I went back and looked through some of the old posts, and to be honest, I was impressed with how much knowledge I had 10 years ago.
More than now? You forgot already?
There's lots I've forgotten. Different knowledge. So if you ask me now for a period of the Three Kingdoms I know really well, it'd be the Yellow Turbans, and I reckon there aren't many people that know more about the Yellow Turbans than me. But 10 years ago, if you'd asked me about Sun Ce, I reckon I knew more than pretty much anyone about him, and that knowledge has just shifted slightly.
Yeah, no, I get that point. So we'll talk about Sun Ce, I guess, in a moment.
I would hope so.
But yeah, so I know you've been. We have a very similar path to the Three Kingdoms because I discovered it through Dynasty Warriors 4. When actually my best friend and I, who shared a PS2, we were about to welcome friends from England, so pen friends from England, and so that was 2004. So I was 16, pretty much in the same age bracket as you, and we bought this Dynasty Warriors 4 together, and I was like, man, I'm not waiting for those guys to show up in France. I'm playing right now, and I fell in love with not only the game, but like you, the biographies. So I would spend so much time just scrolling through the names and reading what they did and all of this. That was the best part of the game for me. You could actually learn about those characters. Speaking of which, no, actually, you know what? Let's go to my next question. What is your favorite form of media retelling the Three Kingdoms? Are you still into the video games or TV shows, books? What is your favorite?
So I think I'd find it difficult to look past Romance of the Three Kingdoms itself, like the original novel. There's a reason that's a masterpiece, and it's the reason that this has had such purchase for more than 1,000 years. Like, we're still talking about it now, even though it happened in like late 2nd century AD, which is absolutely awesome. So I love the original novels. The games, so Dynasty Warriors 5 Ultimate was probably my favorite Dynasty Warriors game.
Is it?
Well, I really liked I can't even remember what the mode was called now, but where you got to start as like a private in the unit of another character and work your way up, and you had the chance to defect between different units, and so that was my favorite mode. But slightly controversially, I think probably because I've played so many Dynasty Warrior games and I knew the storylines off by heart, and the twists weren't really twists for me anymore. I really enjoyed the Warriors Orochi series. Which, have you come across that one?
Yeah, Orochi.
Of course you have.
Like where they mix Dynasty and Samurai Warriors. Yeah,
exactly. And then they started adding in people from Troy and all sorts. But I got to play with my favorite characters in a storyline where I didn't actually know what was going to happen next. So I really enjoyed that. And of course, I've enjoyed reading your novels as well.
Thank you very much. Yeah. TV shows, have you tried the movies, TV shows, and so on?
So Redcliffe, I absolutely adored. Really enjoyed that one. Wasn't so keen on Resurrection of the Dragon.
It had some good bits. You know what? I remember liking the first half when Zhao Yun is still young, And then the second half, not so much. I agree with you on that.
I mean, when he rescues Lushan, that is a spectacular moment. I'm
Yeah.
going to throw out there right now. I grew up learning about this from Dynasty Warriors. Therefore, my pronunciation of all names is absolutely shocking. I know that that's true. I'm working on it. I apologize in advance, especially to your Chinese viewers and listeners who are going to be going, "How are you mangling this language so badly?" I am
I'll
very sorry.
I will put the subtitles. No worries. I'll check.
And then I've tried to get into the 2010 TV series. I just never managed to stick, which is unusual. I normally prefer TV series to movies, so maybe I should just give it another go at some point. But yeah.
This one has so many haters. So I understand if you didn't like it. I loved it, and I plan to make a video about those two TV shows, a comparison of those two TV shows, the 1994 and 2010. But yeah, I admit it's not the easiest to get into, especially when you already know the story, I guess. I don't know if you had the chance to play the last Dynasty Warriors, because you just mentioned that it became less interesting because you already know where it was going. Now, the last
Origins.
Dynasty, yeah, Origins. And Origins is really good, but I really like what they did with the DLC, where you get to play the story of either Dongzhuo, Yuanshao, Lu Bu, or Zhongjiao, but as a bit of an alternative route. So it's like you rediscover something in a very nice way. I was quite impressed by a DLC, which is rare. Usually it feels forced. This time that was pretty good.
Cool. So I downloaded the trailer, and really enjoyed playing it. Oh, to be honest, I don't play that many computer games anymore. I largely only play computer games socially, so like FIFA with friends, or the one I've been doing recently is Sonic Racers, Crossworld. But again, that's on a video call with other people.
All right. Yeah. Okay. I get that point too. But I'm a loner, so I like to play by myself on the PS5 as well. So let's move to characters now. Who is your favorite character of the Three Kingdoms, or the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, if that's not the same?
Whoa. So in the Three Kingdoms, it's definitely Sun Tzu. He is my absolute favorite, and I'm looking forward to talk about why. Maybe in the romance. So my favorite character when I first started playing the games and first probably read the novels through, and it was only when I started looking at the history that Sun Tzu became my favorite, was Zhao Yun. That he's the good guy, isn't he? He's impossible not to like, I think.
Yeah, but he's a bit dull, no? Sometimes don't you feel?
No,
He's
I
too
don't.
good.
But
He's too
I
good.
I always like the good guy. I'm often accused of liking the good vanilla character.
Well, I mean, I like him too. He's, like you said, he's impossible not to like. There is nothing wrong with him. But because there is nothing wrong with him, he's also impossible to love, I
The
felt.
thing is, he's the same in history. That we know nothing
Yeah.
about him that makes me think this isn't a stand-up guy. Yeah,
Which is why I completely butchered him in my books. I made
I
him
know.
into something really different. And I think that's one of the two characters that people commented about the most by sending me messages like, what the hell did you do with him? So that would be him and Xiao Dun. People either love or hate what I did with those guys. I think they will be very surprised when they see my Zhuge Liang.
I think your Xiahou Dun was spot on, and I can see over your right shoulder Bernard Cornwell's King Arthur trilogy, and
Yeah,
it does feel like you
yes.
treated Zhao Yun in the same way that he treated Lancelot.
Oh no, that's the thing. That was absolutely not my. I see. I can imagine the connection, but no, because obviously there's going to be a closer relationship between Liao Hua and Zhao Yun than Derfel and Lancelot in this trilogy. It's not the same. It starts kind of the same, but it's not the same. No, the one character that will feel a lot like Lancelot is Ma Chao, actually.
Wow. See, because I always feel that Ma Chao gets a raw treatment from the wider Three Kingdoms community.
Yeah. Oh,
Because people read the novels and they're like, he's awesome, he's great, we love him, and as in novels and computer games, and then they discover the history and they realize that he's not the person that he's
He's not.
presented. He's not the one obsessed with justice.
Yeah.
But I also think he gets loads of backlash for abandoning his dad. As far as I'm concerned, the moment Marteng took himself to the capital, he was dead. As in, if Machao had not rebelled, then he'd have been killed off quietly to get rid of a potential
Mhm.
rival. And the only way that Machao could keep him alive was by being a threat, where Cao Cao could hold him as a threat over his head. And so,
Mm.
yeah, I think on that note at least, Machao's badly treated. He was brutal in war, but so was Cao Cao back to him. So I yeah, I'm not saying I like him, but I think he gets a raw treatment from people.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but it's just for me, I always feel unfair that he's in among the five tiger generals, because he didn't do much for
Well,
Liu Bei.
yeah, he didn't do much for Shu, did he?
Yeah,
But they didn't know that when they were made the five Tiger Generals. That
true,
was
true, true,
they
true.
had high expectations of what he was going to achieve for them.
I think his biggest, uh, how to say, his most remarkable feat for Shuhan was bringing all those auxiliary from the Chang tribe and the Dien and all of this. So he probably helped a lot in this way, but not ultimately not as a warrior. But that's fine. I get it. So
Let's
he's
move
my
on to Sun
Lancelot.
Tzu. Yeah.
Zhao Yun is something else. Let's talk about Sun Tzu. Why is Sun Tzu your favorite character?
So first of all, he's the greatest what if of the period. I genuinely think his death is the thing that changes it the most. If he'd lived, so I genuinely accept that he was the second best general of the three kingdoms behind Cao Cao, but I do so reluctantly because I accept that because we don't have enough evidence to put him above Cao Cao. But
Mm.
I think if he'd lived, there was every chance that he could have gone toe to toe with Cao Cao and Wei and changed history. But his personality is magnetic. I love that idea that his dad is going off to fight a war and they don't know what to do with him and his family. And he's a child at this point. So what they do is they move him and his entire family, including his mum, in with the family of his best friend, a friend that he has made that the clan has no connection to. And it just so happens that that friend is the son of the most powerful person in the region, Xiao Yu. But that is from Sun Tzu's magnetic personality as a child. And then that friendship is just beautiful. I love watching it flourish. But the same with Tai Chi Si. This is someone who's absolutely opposed to him, and yet he manages to win him over. And the
Mm.
moment that he wins him over, he trusts him enough to let him go and recruit other people. I just can't see many other people in history, frankly, that had that magnetic pull, but also was willing to trust people in that way. And I think you see something similar in the way he treats Yuan Shu's family when Yuan Shu dies, and he just sends people to rescue them and take them in and treats them as well as he can. So yeah, I, I think he's such a compelling character, and I love his friendships and his relationships. I just think they show us a great deal of who he is in a really positive way.
Yeah, and especially for someone who died so young, we have so many stories, historical stories about him and how he made bold choices and sometimes very surprising choices, or even how his allies behaved around him. Like for me, Lu Fan, right? So he's one of his two best friends, you would say, with Zhou Yu, and Sun Tzu is like, hey, do you want to get a better role in my army? He's like, nah, I just want to be the controller. It's fine. And
Lu Fan was done dirty by the novel and therefore by the games. If
right.
you asked me who the most underrated person in the Three Kingdoms was, I would be saying him. He was awesome, and because Zhao Yu was a phenomenal general, but he wasn't Sun Tzu's advisor, was he? Despite what the novels and the games say, Zhao Yu was the guy that Sun Tzu trusted to lead his rear guard. Lu Fan was the person that was next to him, that was his strategist, the one advising him along the way. He was also the person he trusted to babysit his younger brother, who was a complete and utter idiot.
And okay, we'll talk about this in a second. And also, Lu Fan was probably one of the very few who would actually scold Sun Quan from very young age, and in a way that Sun Quan not only forgave him later, but actually gave him responsibility. So as a way, like to say, okay, I was a brat, a brat. Thank you very much for correcting me back then. Here is a new
I can
title
trust
for you.
you because you treated me as I should have been treated back then. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I'm not a Go player, but one of my best friends is a Go player, and he gets
Hmm.
excited by the fact that. Do you know that the oldest recorded game of Go is one between Sun Tzu and Lu Fan? We don't get the ending to the game, but we have a move by move
Oh, really?
record of a game that they played between each other. But as we said, we don't get the ending to the game, which is really disappointing. But there's
Uh,
like a significant proportion of the game is a move by move record.
you know, Lu Fan won. Sun Tzu probably went too bold, just pure offense, no defense, and Lu Fan won. That's how I would picture it. But I didn't know. That's amazing. See,
Um,
that's why I needed to talk to you.
and just the other thing I like about Sun Tzu is, whilst he's magnetic, charismatic, compelling, we also see his flaws, and they're flaws that I can relate to. So he was clearly a very devout Confucianist, Confucian. That he took his faith and religion seriously, and so when a Taoist priest arrived in his territory, he took action against him. I'm not
Mm.
commending that action, but I can see the religious part of his character, and then there's the other story of when he had a scholar executed. So he wrote to this really famous person in his territory and basically asked to have a meeting. And this scholar was really like negative about him and basically just viewed him as a bit of an idiot warrior. So not very politely declined his company, and so he has him executed. And again, that is a flaw. I'm not commending that kind of behavior, but that insecurity
Mm.
when he's stepping into a field that's not his own. In a military field, in a political field, he had complete confidence as why he treats Toshi C the way that he does. But in an academic field, which is not his comfort zone, he shows a degree of insecurity. And I just think that makes for a really
Mm.
interesting, well-rounded character.
That's very true. Yeah. So you see, compared to Zhao Yun, who was perfect, Sun Tzu had a lot of flaws, which is why he's easy to love. So, Sun Tzu, favorite character. I'm guessing your favorite faction among the three would be Dongwu then. You said
No,
you started with Shu.
because I don't like his brother. I really dislike Sun Quan. And obviously Wu didn't exist when Sun Ce was in
No.
charge of the region. So I'm kind of Team Wu up until Zhao Yu dies, and the moment Zhao Yu dies, I kind of defect over to Shu because I I quite like Liu Bei.
Ooh,
Um
surprising.
yeah I compared to Cao Cao and Sun Quan, the black marks on his name aren't very black. He didn't massacre a
Mm.
region. Yes, he betrayed people, but most of the people he betrayed were pretty despicable people themselves.
Mm.
Um, Other than Fa Zheng, he didn't really, and I guess Shang Fei, he didn't let many of his generals run riot, and he generally kept them in check. Yeah, I think he's the least bad of the faction leaders.
Of
One
the
Sun
three big
Ce
ones, yeah.
is, yeah, other than Sun
Yeah.
Ce and maybe Sun Jian, he is the least bad of the faction leaders. So I just about lean in his direction. And Zhuge Liang, Xiao Yun, they're just nice people, those two.
Oh, you think you would consider Zhuge Liang a nice person?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. All
absolutely,
right.
yes.
He's quite neutral in my book. I mean, sorry, not in my books. I mean, in my way of seeing it, he's a neutral, uh, maybe a bit more towards the good, but I wouldn't call him a nice guy like Zhao
Lawful
Yun.
neutral.
Yeah,
Like,
lawful
okay,
neutral. That's the term I was looking for. Thank you.
yeah.
Now, who do you think is the most overhyped character of the Three Kingdoms?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about that all morning. So you very kindly let me know what things you might ask me. And I think part of the challenge is I've been so immersed in discussions about the Three Kingdoms for 20 years. And I think I've played a role in shaping how people perceive these characters in the spaces that
In
I'm
the
involved
forums and yeah.
in the forums, which means that lots of the people who are overrated when you read the novel aren't generally as overrated in my the areas
Mm,
that I move in. So I guess someone that I talk about quite a lot is someone I dislike because I don't think people take into account how unpleasant he was. But I don't think he's overrated because I think he was a phenomenal general warrior. Was Gan Ning, who was absolutely was one of the greatest field commanders of the period. So some of his victories were phenomenal, but the way that he treats the servant boy that runs away and some other things about him make me uncomfortable. And I think people, because they love his character on Dynasty Warriors, because he is a really interesting character on Dynasty Warriors, don't see past that to see some of his flaws. And for people that are coming out of the from the novels, then Guan Yu is often someone who is massively overhyped. I think he's clearly a great warrior. The killing of Yang Liang is something that's truly impressive. So probably most of your listeners know their history, but the way that military units worked was that you had, or armies worked, was that basically most people were conscripts, but named generals, the significant generals, would have their kind of elite guards that were the troops that actually made stuff happen. And they would be the ones that were with the nice armor, that had some training. And so to actually kill another named general is a real achievement, because that's where the fighting was going to be hardest. And Guan Yu does it literally like it says in the novel. He charges across the battlefield, cuts his head off, and charges out. And he must have been surrounded by the best warriors, or some of the best warriors on the field, and the best trained and the best. Like, that is a genuinely remarkable achievement. But does he have any victories as a general to his name? I'm not convinced.
Yeah, his victory ratio is pretty low when you look at the history. But I think the reason why he became so important is because of how easy it was to use the lessons of his life as a moral compass, simply for the fact that even though he was given treasures and honors and titles, he still went back to his brother, who in the story is the good guy. And just for that, I think everyone just kept hyping him up. But yeah.
And I understand those reasons, and he's a character that I like. I think there is, as you say, that loyalty to his brother is awesome. But perhaps he's overrated when it then comes to people discussing the history. But the problem is with all these things, there's always a swing. So people hear this about Guan Yu, they then start talking about the real history, and then they decide that he was completely useless. It's like, no, you don't swing too far. The same thing happens to Lu Bu all of the time, and it's like, yes, okay, he probably wasn't a magic warrior that could run around the battlefield winning battles single-handedly. That doesn't happen in history, but there was a reason that he's got the reputation that he did have. I don't doubt he was the greatest warrior of his day. He just wasn't Dynasty Warriors killing 1,000 people in battle good.
The other day, I posted a video about me visiting his tomb, or what is believed to maybe be his tomb, and someone commented in the video saying, like, it doesn't matter how Lu Bu was in reality. The simple fact that we still call his name nearly 2,000 years later means the guy was bigger than life, no matter what, And all those guys are like this. I'm really surprised you mentioned Gan Ning. It's a very good surprise, good analogy, or good analysis, I think, of this character. I thought you would mention Zhuge Liang, simply for the number of stories that were given to him, but actually happened to others, sometimes not even of the same era. It doesn't change the fact that he was a remarkable, a unique mind, but...
That's fair. I think the reason I don't include him in that conversation is because, again, he's someone who is, like Lu Fan, what the novel does is attributes different things to him rather than his actual achievements, because he was a phenomenal inventor and various other things. And I think he was probably a better general than people give him credit for, albeit he was a less good advisor. And obviously he wasn't like the genius strategist. But he's someone like Guan Yu that people go way too far the other end and basically write him off. And so in my head, he's someone I think of as underrated rather than overrated. But
all right,
because people have swung too far the other way.
Yeah, plus you're involved in this community that know the story so well, the history so well, that you had those conversations before. For many people, that might be the first time they think about it this way. but I think it was on your podcast, because we didn't mention it, but you had a podcast about the Three Kingdoms for some times, and you kindly invited me on it a couple of times. And I think there was this story that came about Guan Yu killing Huaxiong, which in reality happened by Sun Jian. So, but actually, that's not like Sun Jian himself killed Huaxiong. That's one of his guys. So there is always this back and forth between reality, legend, and history. So reality, history, and legend.
And that's what makes Guan Yu's actual general kill stand out. I think we have 5 occasions in the novel, or sorry, in history, of an actual warrior on warrior or named general on named general battle. Whereas obviously the novel is full of duels, which is part of the compellingness of the storytelling. And I'm not criticizing that at all. It's a novel. It's not trying to be history. But that, therefore, Guan Yu's actual achievement is so much more remarkable because of that. And Sun Jian is someone who is criminally underrated.
That's why I don't think I wanted to ask you about who is underrated, because we could talk about this for 2 or 3 hours.
That's true.
Non-stop. Now, who is the real hero of the Three Kingdoms, and who is the real villain? Or is there a villain?
I think in terms of hero, I'm going to have to go refer back to my previous answer. The good guy of the Three Kingdoms is Zhao Yun. I struggle to see anyone else as the true hero. In terms of true villain, the answer that I think most people were expecting me to give, and that I'm inclined to give, is Dong Zhuo. But I remember when I discovered a little bit more about his history, and suddenly when I had an understanding of his motivations, it made much more sense. So I don't know how much people know. So he was based in Liang province, which was regularly being attacked by the surrounding tribes. And the central court had a debate. Should we just give up this province? Should we just abandon the people that live there? Because it would make life a lot easier. The Yuan family were one of the leading people in the faction that wanted to abandon the Liang province, interestingly, and they decided not to. And then that conversation started up again after the Yellow Turban rebellion. And so what Dong Zhuo is initially setting out to do is to save his region and save his people, and the only way that he thinks he can do that is by taking control of the central court, which at that point you're like, oh, okay, well, I get why you did what you did. The problem is what he did after he took control, which was rule as a tyrant and just behave atrociously. So I think he probably does deserve to be the villain of the Three Kingdoms because of his behavior at that point. But his seizing of control of the court, I completely get. So I think I'm probably going for him. It's really tempting to say Cao Cao. And the problem with Cao Cao is you've got that he clearly did a lot of good. His emphasis on meritocracy, his revolutionizing of agriculture, and all those things that are phenomenal. But he also massacred a province twice. And that really isn't okay in any circumstances. So it's far easier to come up with the villain of the Three Kingdoms than the hero of the Three Kingdoms, because there's lots of villains to choose from.
True. No, plus the problem with Cao Cao is he had so much talent, but at the same time, the people who wrote the history had to make him into a bad guy, into making him into the reason why the Jin had to take over the Cao Wei. So we have sources that come almost from their life, from the moment when Cao Cao was alive, and already it seems like he was treated as a bit of a villain, but it was clearly exaggerated with a certain purpose later on.
Absolutely, and that's the challenge with all history, isn't it? Particularly when we're largely limited to one source, is that person has an agenda.
Yeah, true.
Which is why Wu is criminally neglected.
It doesn't matter too much to the story, right? They're just
as far as Sima Quan's concerned, not Sima Quan. Who wrote Sangoshi?
Chen Zhou.
That's the one, Chen Zhou.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. As far as he was concerned, Wu didn't matter.
Yeah, he didn't work by himself. I'm sure he did. That's not his fault. He didn't know enough about those guys in southeast. No one knew about them. So we mentioned briefly that your involvement in the Three Kingdoms community when you started learning about the Three Kingdoms, and then for the next 20 years. So how many people have you met or talked to that in Western countries that really have this passion for the Three Kingdoms?
So many. So I guess the person that for the longest time I had a really good friendship with was a guy called Jude, better known as Dong Zhuo. And I should clarify, we've not fallen out. It's just he's now the primary way that he talks about the Three Kingdoms is Reddit, and I have never wanted to dip my toe into Reddit, so we just don't interact very much anymore. But so he knows more than I do. He is a brain box when it comes to the Three Kingdoms. He's like literally a sponge. He takes it all in and he holds it there. Two of the best known people on Tumblr, because so just to give you an overview, for before I got involved in the Three Kingdoms, in the earliest days, there were these three really big forums that were all competing to be the premier Three Kingdoms forum. And then they all kind of fell away around about the same time. And James, who's the guy that created Commons Archives, created Scholars of Shen Zhou, and everyone kind of migrated there. And for the longest time, that was for Western people the primary place that you spoke about the Three Kingdoms. And then you got these two big personalities, the Archlick and Dao Lun, who set themselves up on Tumblr. I get on really well with both of them, so I don't think they will be too upset with me if I say that I think they enjoyed them being the person that people came to. Turned out that both of them were on Scholars of Shen Zhou, Archlick under a different name, but they liked that on Tumblr people came to them for answers rather than being one of several voices. And so for a while, Tumblr became the central place for Three Kingdoms discussion. And then Scholars of Shen Zhou went down beginning of COVID, and the Discord channel that had kind of been unofficially linked with it became official, and suddenly that exploded, and Discord became one of the primary places to talk about the Three Kingdoms. So I've kind of moved through almost all of those at different points. And so sadly, there are lots of people that I got on really well with who I've fallen out of touch with. And I'm not sure this is quite in the question you're asking, but one of my most exciting moments ever. So I subscribe to the Early Medieval China Journal, which comes out yearly and has articles about early medieval China, sometimes Three Kingdoms, sometimes not. And during COVID, they moved their annual conference from being in person to being online. And so I was able to go online. And at lunchtime, they had this, it felt like an old style Game Boy RPG style game where you had a little character and you were wandering around this bar area, and other people had characters and they were sitting at tables or at the bar, and if you went and sat down at a table, you then entered a video call with everyone else who was on that table. But suddenly I was interacting with people whose books I had sitting on my shelf, and I felt like a fanboy, and it was really very exciting. And I got to talk to Michael Farmer, who is someone whose book I've got behind me, and like so many significant people that I'd been reading their works for years. And I was having to fight really hard to not betray the fact that I was, because everyone else who was there were academics who and I was just like the history geek that was really excited about it. So that was one of my absolute highlights. Sadly, they've moved the conference from being online back to
in person.
And
yeah,
so that was awesome. So Dao Lun, who I mentioned earlier, is in another Discord with me and a guy called Dien, and lots of his friends, and we chat lots. I've met a handful of Three Kingdoms people in person over the years. So Deej is someone that I went and met. You mentioned Manchester earlier. That's where he is. So we went and hung out there, which was cool. Yeah, the few people I've met in real life has been great, and obviously doing the podcast meant that I was doing lots of video calls with people who I'd been
Yeah,
talking through via text for years, and suddenly I got to see their faces and hear their voices, and that was a slightly different experience, but it was great.
yeah. And I should mention, like, the Discord server is going strong right now.
Going
I think
really strong.
yeah, there's like 700-800 people maybe now. I haven't checked in a bit, but uh,
Yeah.
it's
And as you say,
really active.
that's a mix. Is English language, but there are
Mm.
definitely there
Yeah,
are Chinese people who are in that server who are talking about it with us Europeans, but it's largely a Western audience Discord.
it's
Um,
been pretty good. Awesome. Yeah.
and my other experience of the Three Kingdoms community, which was negative, was there was these Facebook groups that I kept on joining, and they were really frustrating because
Mm.
so there was one in particular that had one guy in who had this very firm narrative, which was basically Loewe has did nothing wrong. It was basically his argument, but he would put forward evidence to support his view, and if you put forward any evidence that he disagreed with, he'd be like, "Well, you can't trust the historical sources." It's like, well, okay, so sources that confirm the information that you want to confirm are true, and
Mm.
information that disagrees with you is untrustworthy. And it just made for an awful environment. So I gave up with trying to talk about Three Kingdoms on Facebook.
Yeah, I don't think I'm. No, I did join a few Facebook groups, but that was more like fans of Dynasty Warriors or more than Three Kingdoms. So it remained fairly ludic. That was pretty fun. Nothing too harsh in the historical research and so on. But yeah, but it is like, okay, that was my bet when I started writing those books, the novels about from my series, that there were a lot of Three Kingdoms fans in Western countries, and I was surprised to see how many people just because of the game mostly fell in love with that story. I just recorded a video yesterday actually explaining why I believe the Three Kingdoms is so easy to fall in love with. I guess I will post it just before this interview, so I should have done it the other way around, but never mind. But yeah, I think there is such a huge community of people who can recite the names of like 100 Chinese characters or historical figures, uh, even if the pronunciation is not always there.
I think that should surprise us because there's a reason that Romance of the Three Kingdoms and the operas, and I would love to see a Three Kingdom opera
Mm.
someday, have captured the imagination of a Chinese audience for nearly 2,000 years. And obviously, Red Cliff was at the time the biggest budget movie ever made outside of
Mm.
America. Like, compelling stories are compelling stories. I genuinely think that if a mainstream Western producer created a Three Kingdoms series in English or whatever, it would capture a
Yeah.
universally the imagination. It could be the next Game of Thrones without. Just because the stories, the characters are so interesting and the stories are compelling.
And yeah, and the argument I put in this video I will soon post is that it works. The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, especially, works like a fable to me, in the sense like every character is so easy to define, and they have those very clear traits, personality traits. So in a way, they works almost like fables, where like the lion represents powers and the fox represent cunning. But then you have the Three Kingdoms, and it's the same but a little bit more complicated. So you have combination of human traits, like Cao Cao is basically talent plus ambition, and Liu Bei is ambition plus righteousness or benevolence. And when they come together, they clash. And what happens when those two kinds of personality clash? When you have this ongoing war and so on and so on. So it's so easy to connect.
Literary podcast that I'm listening to is just about to do a pay for series, so I probably won't do it. Thinking about outlaw motifs
Mm.
in literature, and they specialize in Western literature, but they're doing Water Margin, which was obviously written by the same guy who wrote Romance of the Three Kingdoms, as one of their with that same idea that actually these motifs are just
Yeah,
as clear in Eastern literature as Western literature.
yeah. That's true. That's true. Actually, as a novel, as a book, Water Margins is easier to enjoy than Three Kingdoms in many ways. It's a story.
I didn't find that mainly
Oh,
because I
really?
okay, controversial comment coming. I didn't like any characters in Water Margin. That there was no one I met. I was like, I want to be on your team. Whereas Romance of the Three Kingdoms, lots of the like Loewe is a good guy. Now
Mm.
history they've whitewashed him slightly, but in the novel he is a genuinely nice guy that I want to win.
Yeah, you don't spend enough time with each character, with a character in the Water Merchants to connect with them. I assume. I get it too. Yeah. What? Okay, let's move on to then this next question. Very important, and a lot of people asked me this question over the last 4 years. Is what would you suggest people read or watch or listen to in order to know more about the Three Kingdoms? What are your go-to resources?
So I'm going to do a plug. The podcast that you mentioned earlier, Discourse of the Three Kingdoms, was something that is on hiatus. I would like to think it will come back someday when there is more time. So I that would be what I'd recommend to listen to. In terms of reading, if you've not read Romance of the Three Kingdoms, read Romance of the Three Kingdoms. If you've read that, then Rafe de Crespigny is a phenomenal writer, and lots of his earlier stuff is available online because it's out of copyright. So his book on Wu is excellent, called Generals of the South, and you can download that. That's a really good introduction. Imperial Warlord about Cao Cao is not free to own, but is an excellent resource. So I have a. If you were to go to Scholars of Shen Zhou, you will be able to find my name, Sun Fin, and you'll be able to click on my signature, and I've got a library which is full
Mm.
of different books and sources that I'd recommend. I'm just going to look at my bookshelf behind me. So this is old. Cambridge History of
Oh
China,
yeah.
Volume 1, but is absolutely excellent. And it has a mixture of political history, social history, military history. So we'd definitely recommend that one. In terms of social history, Michael Loewe is
Oh
probably the
yeah.
go-to person. And he's got a lot of books that are all fairly reasonably priced. If you're interested in military history, it's harder to find something that's really good. Probably the best thing was written by this guy, David Graff, but it's not actually about the Three Kingdoms period. You're just
Mm.
having the prologue is excellent, though. Um, and the book that I keep trying to encourage people to read, and I don't think anyone does, is this one, The Scripture on Great Peace, because we think that's what the Yellow Turbans had and believed, and that's really cool.
Oh, I didn't know about this one. I'll have to check. Yeah.
If
So,
you listen to our deep dive on Discourse of the Three Kingdoms,
oh, you
the
mentioned it. That's true.
other people let me talk about it for 5-10 minutes because I was very excited about it.
Yeah. No, I mean, just to add to the names you dropped right now, Rafe de Crespigny is he's the
Goat.
goat of the Three Kingdoms and late Han Dynasty. Fire over Luoyang is brilliant. It's a
Yeah.
brilliant overview of the Eastern Han Dynasty. I go back to this book before I start writing any of mine. So this one and Imperial Warlord, those are my two go-to books from him. Michael Loewe, I think there was a Government of the Qin and the Han. Uh, it's awesome. Those guys are just so
Although
good.
I would actually say for the government one, Rafe de Crespigny's mentor, Hans Bilenstein,
Bilenstein,
uh,
yeah.
did one which I think is actually better. It's older.
The
Um,
bureaucracy.
yeah. And
Yeah.
the book that I spent years trying to track down was he wrote a extended article on Loyang, which
Mm.
Rafe references quite a lot in Fires Over, but he doesn't actually do a description of the city itself in the same way. And it took me 12 years to find it, but I have one of 3 copies in English that I know of that exists in the world. So I'm very happy with that. That's one of my one of my proudest, or one of my most treasured possessions.
That's cool. And plus, there are so many books that are not specifically about Han or Three Kingdoms, but touch upon that topic, among others, that are just so interesting to read. I know I often go back to reading Albert Dien. And I think there was a book of his that focuses a lot on armor and weapon and cold steel, cold weaponry, and all of this. That was super interesting. But I know he wrote others, not just about.
But he's one of the editors of the Cambridge History of China volume.
Yeah. So
yeah.
All right, cool. I'm glad we are we read the same. I'll take it as a token of approval of my research.
Absolutely.
So there you have it. I think that was for my very first interview as an author. So someone interviewed me, and one of the first comments like, "Can you make a video about resources?" So finally, we talked about resources nearly 4 years later.
You asked me if I'd be up for doing an interview about resources like 4 years ago, and it never quite happened. But that's fine. Yeah, and I guess the other thing I'd plug is do sign up for the Early Medieval China Journal. They produce a new resource every year, and once you're subscribed, you get access to the entire backlog of every article they've ever published, which does include some absolutely awesome ones on various different aspects of Three Kingdoms, but also wider history.
Yeah. Cool. So I'll list all of this in the description of the video, obviously, for everyone, and I will include the link to your page on Shen Zhou, and so that they can find the whole list, a big list than this. Now, do you have any? I'm asking this question, but I know the answer. Do you have any funny project on your side for the Three Kingdoms?
Yeah, so I'm also writing a Three Kingdoms novel. I have been writing it, I think, longer than you've been writing yours, and I'm nowhere near as well through. So I'm about 20,000 words into my novel, so I'm about a quarter of the way there. It's set in the Yellow Turbans period, very much like you, Bernard Cornwell-esque style novel, albeit not first-person perspective. Two characters, one on the Han Dynasty army and one a Yellow Turban rebel. I've got like 20 novels planned that who knows if I will ever get round to even finishing the first one, but I would love to get that one done at some point. My problem is, so the entire way through, up until this point, I've known exactly what I want to happen in my protagonist chapters, so that the member of the Han army, and I've not been sure what I wanted to do with the antagonist. I've now got to a point in the story where I know exactly what I want the antagonist's chapters to look like, and I know where I want my protagonist to be in 3 chapters' time, but I can't figure out what to write in the in-between stage, and that has given me a real case of writer's block, and I've stalled, and I don't think I've written anything on it in almost a year, so I have properly stalled, but watch this space.
Come on, Stephen. The world is waiting. We need more Three Kingdoms books in the English sphere.
Absolutely.
Plus, I read the first chapter. That was brilliant. We need to know more. So thank you very much for answering all those questions, Stephen. It was awesome speaking with you today. And as usual, about the Three Kingdoms. I'll post this video very soon, so stay tuned to check on the comments. And if anyone has a specific question for Stephen, please feel free to leave them in the comments as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure to chat.
Yeah, let's do that again, and let's focus on the resources maybe next time.
Absolutely.
All right. See you very soon, Stephen. Cheers.
See you soon. Bye.